call the meeting to order. Before we hear the cases, we have I have to read a statement concerning how the board operates, so bear with me. This is a public hearing, and we are the Zoning Board of Adjustments for Putnam County, Florida. We operate under the authority of Articles 11 and 12 of the Land Development Code as amended. The primary responsibility of the board is to hear and decide appeals challenging final determinations made by the Planning and Development Services Department under the Land Development Code, and to hear and act upon requests for variances, special use permits, non-conforming use determinations, and preliminary development plans under the Land Development Code. A variance is a relaxation of the requirements of the zoning code in a particular case where, because of unusual circumstances, a literal enforcement of our zoning code would result in undue or unnecessary hardship. The zoning code permits us to authorize variances only for height, size of structure, size of yards, and open spaces. If we grant a variance, we may impose reasonable condition on the use of the property, which must be satisfied if the variance is to remain valid. The standards we use in deciding whether or not to grant a variance are listed in Section 45-833 of the Land Development Code. A special use permit is special permission to use property in a fashion which the zoning classification of the property does not automatically permit. If we grant a special use permit, we may impose reasonable conditions on the use of the property which must be satisfied if the special use permit is to remain valid. Unlike a change in the zoning classification, as a general rule, a special use permit applies only to the specific use requested in the application for a special use permit. The standards we use in deciding whether or not to grant a special use permit are listed in Section 45-1083 of the Land Development Code. Procedurally, we will call each case by name and number. A member of the staff will then briefly explain to us the nature of each request. We will then take any comments from the applicant or their representative, followed by any public comments concerning the request. Please direct all comments and statements to the board and not to other people in the audience. Before speaking, we will ask each person to be recognized, come forward to the lectern, and identify his or herself by name and address. After all persons wishing to speak have been heard, we will entertain a motion from the board. This motion will be voted on by board members and become our final order. Any decision made by this board can be appealed to the circuit court. However, any appeal must be filed within 30 days after the Board of Adjustment has rendered the final order which is being appealed. Are there any questions? Before the first case is heard, all those wishing to speak today need to be sworn in, so will the notary please administer the oath? Jenny, the people are not standing. Okay, if you're going to speak, you need to stand and raise your right hand. I think Mr. Terwilliger sort of stood up at a later. Okay, before we hear from Zach today, we need to have a roll call for ex parte communication. And so the first case for this ex parte communication will be the special use permit 22-007. So there will be a roll call for the ex parte communication for that case.
No.
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 Yes, I spoke with the lady.
Okay. Ready for report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Zachary Baker, Planning and Development Services. This is a special use permit application, case number SUP 22-007.
Okay, Zach, I'm having difficulty hearing you.
Is that better?
That's better so far.
Would you like me to restart at all?
Madam Chair, before we start,
Let me ask Mr. Ballingy a couple of questions, if you don't mind.
Oh, okay.
Earl, who did you speak with in particular? Who did you speak with? Okay. And when was that? Okay. What did your conversation entail? All right. Did you discuss her application? Did you discuss her application? You did not. All right. Thank you, sir. Please.
Okay.
Madam Chair, did you want me to restart from the top?
Yeah, go ahead and start all over again.
Okay, no problem. So for the record, Zachary Baker, Planning and Development Services. This is an application for a special use permit, case number SUP 22-007. The applicants are Rebecca and Emma Shuram. The location is, there's an error in my PowerPoint, it's 109 Melrose Landing Boulevard, Hawthorne, Florida, 32640. Parcel ID is 02-10-1860-1860-0060-0010. Parcel is approximately 5.51 acres, located on the south side of Melrose Landing Boulevard, approximately a quarter-mile east of Baden-Powell Road. The future land use for the property is agriculture. The zoning district for the property is agriculture. Land Development Code Section 45-72(e)(8 requires a special use permit for a kennel in the Ag Zoning District. LDC Section 45183 provides a definition of a kennel as well as supplemental regulations for the defined use. The proposed kennel will be required to meet all applicable requirements of LDC Section 45-183 and conditions applied to the special use permit. Here you have an aerial image showing the parcel and surrounding properties. Here you can see the zoning map for the subject parcel as well as surrounding properties. Future land use map for the subject and surrounding properties. Special flood hazard map for the surrounding and subject property, and a wetlands map for the subject and surrounding properties. I've also taken the liberty to include a picture of the privacy fence that's along the front property line. This was a speaking point in my staff report. In order to comply with fence uniformity requirements of the Land Development Code, and based on the applicant supplied narrative that a fence would be installed to buffer the noise of barking. This is the fence that they have on the front. So either this fence or one that is compatible to it shall be placed on all four property lines. I've also have here two different site plans. It's important to note that the site plan on the left is the plan that provides the proposed location of the dog kennel. I don't remember all values. The one of concern would be that western property line. It's 110 feet drawn to scale. The site plan number 2 on the right side of the screen shows an encroachment of 76.5 feet. So one of the requirements is that kennel be 100 feet from any adjacent property boundary line. So that is an error on this one. But the right site plan shows, the other structures on the site, the proposed parking area, the fence types, which the fence types were cropped out on this image, but it is in the staff report supplied to you. I believe it's page 18 of that staff report. So per section 45-1083 of the Land Development Code, the Zoning Board of Adjustment is to evaluate the application and make a determination based on specific findings of fact provided to you in the staff report. Those criteria have been addressed in the staff report, and the responses are available in the SUP case folder. So conclusion and recommendation. The applicant has requested a special use permit to allow a dog kennel in the Ag Zoning District. The proposed use is consistent with the Ag Zoning District and the Agriculture Future Land Use Designation. The proposed kennel meets the issuance criteria for a special use permit in the Ag Zoning District. Therefore, the request is hereby recommended for approval, subject to the following conditions. 1, obtain Development Review Committee, DRC review and approval. 2, obtain and maintain any applicable county, state, or federal licenses and registrations. 3, dogs associated with the proposed kennel operation shall be confined to the insulated and enclosed kennel from 30 minutes prior to sunset until 30 minutes after sunrise. 4, hours of operation for which citizens can purchase dogs shall be limited from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. As required by LDC Section 45183B3, the kennel operator shall, at a minimum, dispose of animal waste in a manner approved by the Florida Department of Health. 6, waste disposal shall occur on a daily basis to prevent the accumulation of filth and to prevent odors and pests from carrying on to neighboring properties. 7, the proposed insulated and enclosed dog kennel shall obtain permits from the Putnam County Building Department before the use can commence. 8, at least 10 feet of existing vegetation along all boundary lines of the subject parcel shall be retained while the proposed use is in existence in order to buffer and screen the proposed use from adjacent property owners. 9, the privacy fence shall be appropriately installed and maintained along all boundary lines of the subject parcel while the proposed use is in existence in order to buffer and screen the proposed use from adjacent property owners. Finally, 10, any intensification of the use by adding to the proposed 320 square foot enclosure or by offering boarding and or grooming services to other citizens requires an additional special use permit to determine if the possible additions may affect the proposed use. And before I answer any questions, that red folder item that I passed out prior to starting the hearing with those 2 emails, we do not know the location of those residents, and in one case, even really their given name, so I can't confirm where they live in conjunction to this proposed use. But because they were sent in to me, it being public record, I thought it necessary to provide you all with those copies. So their claims or opposition or whatever you want to call it may hold no weight, if they live in East Palatka.
Okay, any questions for staff? Linda?
The proposed kennel you showed on the right-hand picture being 76.5 feet from the property line, and you said it was supposed to be 100. Is the drawing correct?
So that second drawing is incorrect for that location. The image on the left side of the screen, which I have up, that site plan shows the kennel at 110 feet from the western boundary line. It's drawn to scale where each of those blocks equal 20 feet. So I counted them all out. All of the other property lines are of no concern. They're well over 100 feet. That one is 110 feet. After we received that site plan, we asked for more information such as, screening and buffering requirements, parking spaces, additional structures, and the septic and drain field for the site. So that second one that they sent in shows the other information, and it just has the error on the setback location for that west property line.
Thank you.
Jack, I have a question concerning on number 9, when you said a privacy fence shall be, you put installed into that condition, which is not on our paperwork. So clarification on the fences. I know in the front is that nice metal fence, and then on the sides, what I could see was like field fencing. Are they going to enclose those sides as far as permanent fencing or board or anything like that?
Yeah, so that is a scrivener's error in both the staff report and on the PowerPoint I provided today. I meant to include installed. So in their narrative that they provided, they stated that fencing would be on all boundary lines to buffer the barking. So the field fences, the chain link fences that exist cannot buffer, the barking noises. So in reading their narrative, it's believed that they are going to install some sort of a noise mitigating fence. Now, whether it's the same one that they have on that front property line, it's up to the director's discretion to approve a fence that's compatible. So if they wanted to do a 6-foot board on board, a 4-foot board on board, a 6-foot dog ear, whatever the case may be, vinyl fence, they can do that as long as it is a compatible material, color, and fence type.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Okay, thank you. Before we hear from the applicant, let's do a site visit roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Okay, would the applicants, Rebecca and Emma, is it Sharoon, like to come forward and address the board? The applicants, would you like to come forward to the podium and address the board? For the record, please state, where's the mic there? Oh, it's down there?
It's bent down.
Okay. For the record, please state your name and address.
My name is Rebecca Shurum, 109 Melrose Landing Boulevard, Hawthorne, 326.
Pull the mic a little bit closer to you, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, would you like to give us a little bit more detail other than what the staff report, or have anything to say?
Well, I guess what I have to say is I've been breeding for 10 years in a different state. And I'm finally home, glad to be here. I have been kind of blown away at how difficult it is to be able to breed. I am a recent veteran's widow, and this is my income. Now I feel that some community members may be against that being as your business. But I just want to say we are not a puppy mill. We will never be. We do things right. All of our dogs are registered. They're all fed well and taken care of emotionally, physically. And we're a team that does that every day. I just feel like it's very important to be a good steward to what the Lord gives you. So I get that the ordinances and things are to be against those, and I certainly am as well. I am a very small breeder, and I plan to keep it that way.
Okay, I noticed that there's nothing stating the number of dogs on the premises at any one given time. Is that not necessary to be in there? Or who's going to police that?
So it would have been a good bit of information in hindsight to acquire from the applicants. All we have was the square footage of the enclosure, 320 square feet. I looked at some different websites. There's really no minimum or maximum designation for a confined space for one dog. So it's hard to say how many. But perhaps the applicant can elaborate on the proposed number of dogs at any given time.
I would have 12 or less.
12 or less?
Yes.
Kind of hard to say, isn't it? If they have a litter of 10, are they considered dogs
No,
too?
the litter isn't considered your breeding dogs, not as far as I know.
Oh, just for breeding dogs, and you have to specify.
Right, breeding dogs is 12.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Fisher.
What breed are they?
Cavalier King Charles, mini poodles, and I do have some medium poodles, but those are not going to be around.
Madam Chair, just so,
Think you have a question?
excuse me, Madam Chair, let me remind the board members, please use your microphone so we make sure it's taken down correctly.
Yeah, I know, the sound system in here is not the best in the world, so
Yeah, I
yeah,
know.
you do.
I understand, but please,
But please,
you got to use the microphone.
E?
Yes.
yeah. It's
It's
green.
on. I might have not been close enough.
question? I answered your, okay. Any other comments from the board? Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else in attendance wishing to come forward and speak in favor of this application? No one is coming forward. Anyone wishing to come forward and speak in opposition? Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Shane Bryant. My address is 110 Dewdrop Way, Hawthorne, Florida. It's approximately a mile to a mile and a quarter from where this kennel will be located.
You're across the street?
We're about a mile down the road.
You're a mile down the road, okay.
Yes, ma'am. We're 2 miles from the Boy Scout camp. The Boy Scout camp is on the other side of the kennel from where our house is at. And our concern would be for the noise and the lighting. I realize they're saying that they're going to do some buffering for the barking, but we're out in a rural area and sound carries quite well at night. In the summer when the Boy Scouts are present, we can hear them doing their chants and songs from the camp, and they're 2 miles from our house, and this kennel would be just over half that distance. The other concern would be lighting. I don't know what the lighting is going to be like. We moved out there in 2008 because it's nice and dark and it's quiet, and we kind of like it to stay that way. 320 square feet sounds like a fairly small enclosure for 12 breeding dogs to me. If they've got it buffered where it's quiet, then I think that's fine. But I think what they should have done is they should have asked if they were going to get the special use permit before they started investing the money in the property, as opposed to starting it and then saying, oh, wait, we have to get the permit, and now we'd like you to give it to us because we've already started. So I'm speaking as also as the president of the Melrose Area Property Owners Association, which is the HOA that's out there. This property is not included in it, but it's right next to it.
So there is an HOA for that?
There is an HOA. At the current time, the declarations and restrictive covenants have been suspended due to the Marketable Record Title Act. We're in the process of trying to revitalize with the DEO at this time.
Okay, so your HOA is suspended, so it's not in effect right now, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right, any questions from the board? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may too, I just wanted to remind the audience that the proposed kennel is going to be insulated and enclosed, and that the dogs, one of the conditions is that the dogs will be contained in that insulated enclosed kennel from 30 minutes prior to sunset until 30 minutes after sunrise. So ideally, there shouldn't be any noise concerns at night if they're in this.
Only in the daytime then?
Correct.
Okay. Anyone else wishing to come forward and speak in opposition of this application?
Karen Bryant, 110 Dewdrop Way, Hawthorne, Florida, 32640. I noticed on the drawing that it has to be 100 feet from the boundary line of the next property. What's the distance from the house to that particular thing? On the drawing, it was only 40 feet. Is
You're
that
talking
allowed?
about their residence to
Yes.
the house? Is there a stipulation that it has to be so far away?
I mean, 3 feet is what's required for accessory structures on
How much?
someone. 3 feet
3.
is what's
Okay.
required. Now, the fire department for like a commercial building or mixed residential would be a 10-foot separation.
Okay.
But that's not including an animal structure. With
You're correct.
animals, it's usually further distance from the house.
You're correct. I mean, so the land development code doesn't specify how far the kennel has to be from the residence. Within 45 183B3, it simply states 100 foot from the adjacent property line or residence of other ownership.
Okay.
All right, the other thing is noise. He's saying that they'll be put into this kennel at night. There's people around that work night shift that are up sleeping during the day. With a metal enclosed fencing, it's going to make more of a noise that I would see rather than buffering it. I think this needs to be in a business district, not in a residential area.
Any questions for Mrs. Bryant? Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to come forward and speak in opposition of this application? Okay, no one else is coming forward, so at this time, we will close the meeting to the public and open it up for board motion and discussion. Nobody wants to discuss? We gotta have a motion before we can discuss it.
Do the dogs have a fenced-in area that they could run around in during the day, or is it going to be the entire property?
Okay, I tell you what, if you're gonna ask that question, even though we closed it, Mrs. Sharoon, would you like to come forward and answer that and be a part of the record?
Yes, ma'am. The 5 acres is fenced completely. I ensured that that happened. Now, 3 sides of it is my neighbor's, and I was hoping to not have the expense of, doing my own fence. But if that's what is required, then certainly I will do that. My dogs, the reason I have the larger poodles that I am selling is because he's a barker. But the rest of them rarely bark.
Okay, that's not the question. Linda, would you like to repeat your
My
question?
question is, during the daytime, do all the dogs have the run of the entire 5 acres? Or are they going to have a private fenced-in area? I mean, it can be chain linked, or whatever.
They will have dog runs, and we let them out a couple of hours, in several different dogs. You can't let them all out at the same time.
But they'll have the run of the entire 5 acres
Yes.
during the daytime.
But not all at one time.
Right.
Okay. Oh, any other
Because
questions?
of the breeding, you have to be careful, who breeds with who, so you have to only let out certain ones at certain times.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, ma'am. Okay, let's go back to asking for a motion and a vote and discussion.
Madam Chairman, I move that we approve special use permit 22-007 as the request meets the criteria of a special use permit required by section 2545-1083 of Putnam County Land Development Code, and with the 10 conditions recommended by staff, and authorize the chair to sign the final order.
Second.
We have a motion and second to approve special use permit 22-007. Any further discussion? If not, all of those in favor, please indicate by raising your right hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, motion all opposed? Motion carries 8-0. Just for reference, there is a 30-day appeal process, so if there's any issues or concerns, make sure you work closely with staff. And good luck in your endeavor.
Madam Chair, one question. With the approval of those conditions, do you give us the range to make that change for the fence about installed and maintained?
Oh, we didn't, okay, somebody should have brought that up before we voted on this from the standpoint of inserting the install part. So, No, install. He asked about the number, I think it's 8 or 9, where he put install.
It should have read installed, but I left that part out as an error.
Right, so, Mr. Perry, you want to jump in here and tell us?
Madam Chair, you can go back and take another vote if you'd like. It'll be fine since staff pointed out that there was I'm sure it's just a scrivener's error, but anyway, you can put that on the record that it's supposed to be part of it, and you can vote again if you'd like.
So we can vote, I mean, we can add that number 9 has been changed to say installed rather than having to go back and vote the entire.
Well, you can, yeah, that would be fine too, if it's understood that the board understood that was supposed to be what it was, as opposed to.
Okay, all right. So in number 9, you want to read it exactly how it was stated in your report, which was not in our report.
Give me one moment.
Excuse me.
Okay, so for the record, condition number 9 shall have read, "The privacy fence shall be installed and appropriately maintained along all boundary lines of the subject parcel while the proposed use is in existence in order to buffer and screen the proposed use from adjacent property owners."
Okay, so you are not allowing the applicant to use any of the existing fences that are on the 3 sides other than what she has put up in the front?
If,
Okay, so she's going to have to do her own
If-
fencing.
if those fences are of privacy fencing, then yes, she can use what's existing. But if it's all chain link and no climb, then she would have to add her own privacy fencing.
Okay, another question, did you inform the applicant that that was part of one of her requirements?
I made that phone call to her this morning before the SUP case. I tried to send it to her via email, the whole staff report, and it was too large to send via email. So I made the phone call and explained to her that the fencing would have to go around all 4. Privacy fencing, whether it be board on board, dog ear, 4 foot, 6 foot.
But not the existing fencing that's there, because it is like a field fencing and maybe chain link, I think.
Correct. The
Okay.
whole intent is that it offers noise buffering, and a chain link fence just doesn't do that.
Correct. Okay, you put a clog in this machine. Okay. Ms. Ishimura, come back to the podium, please, ma'am. Please state your name again for the record.
Rebecca Sherm.
Okay, I know that you referenced a few minutes ago, you were talking about the fence. If you had to, you would not want to incur that kind of expense. But
Yes, ma'am.
if that's one of the stipulations that they're going to put in here, are you okay with this?
Do I have a choice?
Obviously not.
I really had
Madam
thought
Chair, if I may.
I had it,
Excuse me, okay. Go ahead and finish, and I'll let Zach jump in. Go ahead, Ms. Rue, finish what you were saying.
I thought I had my dogs secured. We made sure that all the fences were, my son repaired what needed repaired. I don't know that buffering is even a possibility, to be honest with you. And I don't think there's a lot of barking.
Well, everybody's opinion to a lot of barking and a little barking, but from the standpoint of the fencing, the 2 sides that I saw are strictly like field fencing or wire. There's no, solid fencing on those sides, and I couldn't see the back, so I'm assuming the back is just the same, chain link fencing in the back?
Yes, ma'am. Based on that second staff report that was received, it's all open
It's
mesh
all open
fencing.
fencing. Okay,
Yes, ma'am, in the future, I had planned on doing those 3. I'm just in the middle of building a home.
I understand that, so where's the dilemma, can you live with this? Are you going to give her a time frame that she has to complete the fencing, or before she can do her operation, she has to complete the fencing?
So the LDC gives her 545 days from a determination to commence the project. So she
How many?
had 545.
545 days that she would need to be able to install these fences.
Well, that's to just commence the project, to take it
Okay,
to the next step.
commence.
So she's got 545 days, and then it's also, this is staff recommendations. So the board does have the ability to add or change
Or change.
any of the conditions placed.
Well, it is financially a burden, and I don't want to be irresponsible. I want to be responsible and do the right thing. It was just absolutely shocking to hear that, because I thought I had my ducks in a row. And I did meet with Zachary and call him long before I bought this home. So I didn't just, park there and plan on this permit happening. I got my paperwork together.
Okay. Ms. Ratner?
Zachary, in some instances, buffering on other things, other buildings, restaurants, or other things that we've had, buffering also could be called shrubbery, a shrubbery. Now, she doesn't have perfect fencing, but if she added a dense shrubbery to that, which would be a whole lot cheaper than fencing, would that satisfy the land development code?
So the difficult thing with kennels is the intensity can range on them from a small breeding operation to 500 kennel boarding operation. So the LDC doesn't define a specific density or an intensity category for it. At a bare minimum, a 10A buffer is what's recommended for this project, in which shrubbery could accomplish that. But if we went the shrubbery route, it'd be 10 foot worth of shrubbery, 10 foot wide, 6 foot tall worth of shrubbery along all three property lines.
I do have dense woods. I have lots and lots of trees and underbrush, especially around the border of the property, because we're not using that. So there already is that buffer, and I have no plans on cutting any of that.
And another issue is the fence uniformity regulation of the zoning ordinance, where it states that on all four boundary lines or on all boundary lines, the fence shall be uniform in materials, colors, heights, so on and so forth. The director has the discretion to waiver from that, but it has to be compatible in some way.
Compatible as in the material, or you said color, material?
And type.
The front fence looks fantastic, so it had to be expensive to start with, so, that could not be imposed upon her to do the entire perimeter of her property.
Right, and I'm not making the recommendation that the entire perimeter of the property be that type of fence, but it needs to be somewhat compatible. If you've got the privacy fence like they do out front and then just a chain link down the sides and the rear, it's kind of hard to say that that's compatible.
Okay.
So she doesn't, I'm sorry.
Madam Chair, if I may add to Zach's statement. So the director has the ability in the code to waive that requirement of uniformity. So if she wants just to put up a wood fence, that can be allowed, and we plan on working with her with that.
Okay.
That fence up front is very nice. Me and Zach visited the site, but we have the ability to waive that requirement of requiring that same fence down all sides. So we do plan on working with the applicant. However, these provisions are in place, and she's going beyond her capacity to mitigate potential impacts on surrounding properties, mostly noise. So we do plan on working with her on that, and if we have that ability to waive that requirement, we certainly will.
Okay, the 545 days, that's basically, what, a year and a half, 18 months or something like that she has to commence the project? Is there a deadline to finish?
There's no established deadline to complete the project. It just states that it has to commence within
In
5.
the 18 months she had started?
Correct.
Okay.
But in the meantime, I can't breed. and so I have no income.
Now, that's, I don't think that's, that's not holding you up from breeding.
I mean, the SUP is to allow her to breed.
Right. So that, the fencing would have nothing to do with your ability to breed the dogs.
That would be wonderful.
All right, you can live with that then.
Yes, ma'am.
One more
Okay, one more question.
This may have already been answered. She has 5 acres,
Yeah.
5.5.
5.5. Okay. Does she have to fence the whole 5 acres with that kind of fence? If she could she bring it in?
And fence the kennel.
Yeah, and, I have more acreage. I don't have all my acreage fenced, I have horses and all that, we fence 3 of the 5 acres, Does she have to fence the whole?
So the intent would be to fence the area in which the dogs can run. And I know she expressed that there would be, a specific dog runs, and then throughout periods of the day, groups of dogs would have the whole run on the property. So to me, if she's going to let the dogs have the whole run on the property, then the whole property should be fenced.
Right. But if she limits where the dogs would be running free and fence in the compound as far as the dog kennel itself, then can she do that rather than fencing the entire perimeter of her property?
I don't see why not. If she wanted to leave it as like 1 acre for total dog run and put a privacy fence around that 1 acre, that'd be fine.
Would that help?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay, so, Mr. Perry, you want to, is there, since we've already voted to approve this, do we go back and start all over again, or do we just
Madam
vote
Chair,
on
let me
number 9?
ask Zach. Zach, did you point out, I don't have an agenda in front of me, so I can't look at what you're looking at. But did you point out this particular condition, the right condition to the board prior to the vote?
He did state that, I questioned him on the fact that you did say install, so that was not in the original 9 conditions.
It was
The
not in
word
the original
install
9
was
conditions?
not, but when he did his report, he did say install.
And Mr. Perry, I don't have the staff report in front of me either, but one of the criteria for a special use permit is appropriate buffering and screening. And within that excerpt of the criteria, I did elaborate on, the applicant supplied narrative indicates, mitigated fencing for buffering purposes.
Okay. Well, Zach and Madam Chair, the reason I asked the question is, what's important here is that the board actually understands what they're voting for. And if you explain that, then they understood that their vote was contingent upon this particular corrected stipulation. I mean, am I making any sense?
We got you, I got you.
Okay. And Madam Chair, I'll ask you, is that the point we are at right now, that the board did have that information before they voted?
The board did have it before
Okay,
the
well,
vote.
in that case, as long as the board knows what they're voting for, then the vote can stand.
Okay.
If there's some kind of confusion, as the chair, you can go back and take another vote.
Okay, because it does say installed and appropriately maintained along all boundary lines of the subject parcel while the proposed use is in existence in order to buffer and screen the proposed use from adjacent property owners. So with that, it does say the entire piece of property. That's the way I'm reading it, correct, guys?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I guess we're back to the entire piece of property has to be fenced.
And Madam Chair, may I add, the final development order that is to be signed will reflect those changes. You will see those.
Okay.
I have a question. There is a stipulation, one of the rules is to have a parking lot area. I don't have customers come on my property.
That's not an issue with us, because it wasn't part of the recommendations or anything, so I wouldn't think about it.
Okay. Thank you.
Don't open that can of worms. Okay, I guess we are going to let it stand. that she realizes also that she has 545 days to begin the project to fence in the perimeter of her property. So I guess the vote, Mr. Perry, will stand as voted,
Yes, ma'am.
okay? All right. Guess we can move on. Okay, before we hear the next case, it's variance 23-001. We need to do an ex parte communication roll call.
Yes.
No, an ex parte communication? Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
No.
No? Okay. Mr. Joseph, you ready?
Moving forward. Thank you, Madam Chair, board members. Good afternoon. For the record, Joseph Searley, Planning and Development. This is agenda item number 2. It's a non-residential variance, 23-001. The variance is from the applicant Clyde B. Terwilliger from Blue Water Bay Cafe, location 319 State Road 26. It is a 0.36 acre parcel that is currently zoned commercial. The future land use is also commercial. The request is to an expansion of a covered outdoor seating area to encroach into the front setback, and the reduction would be from 35 feet to 1.6 feet. It's also important to note that that 0.36 acre parcel is not, there's 2 other parcels where the parking takes place. So the intent is to move the parking area away from the front and discontinue backing movements onto, I believe, State Road 26, and which will provide for a much safer parking area, and put the seating area out in the front. So the covered seating area, I believe, is approximately 864 square feet. It will be located close to the road. However, along this area, there is an intersection, looking at the aerial, directly to the east. So you're not getting much, high-speed traffic through this area. What I will say is a lot of progressive planning, and what they do is they reduce the front setbacks and pull the building up to the front to provide for it's more of a traffic calming device, and it's common in planning. So, I mean, there are pros and cons to this. As you can see, the future land use is commercial. It's surrounded by commercial. This is a commercial corridor. It's not uncommon for buildings to be pulled up to the front of the road. And the zoning is also commercial. Staff has recommended approval of this. I know it seems like, a pretty intense request. However, it is a common practice in planning to pull these buildings up front. It will be an outdoor seating area that's be covered. It will remove parking from the front facade of the structure. And currently, we did do a site visit. Currently, there is parking in the front, and there is backing movement onto that roadway. This will eliminate that, omit that, and the parking, they have enough parking on the side and those other 2 parcels that would accommodate any type of parking they need. Other than that, staff's recommended approval of this, and I believe they meet 5 out of the 6 criteria. However, staff recommends approval. This is a legislative decision, so ultimately it is up to this board if we do move forward with this. But if you have any questions, I'm here, and I believe the applicant is here as well to answer any questions.
One question from me.
Sure.
I'm assuming then the retaining wall, half retaining wall, will go up to the sidewalk or a little bit back from the sidewalk?
That was a condition that I believe Zach conditioned.
I
Zach,
didn't
are
see
you
it.
able to
It
answer that
didn't
question?
specifically say the
I meant to ask
sidewalk.
him before I got here, but we were running a little shy on time.
That was my question, too.
What's the question?
There's a sidewalk in front of, all the way down on 26 on both sides. My question is, I'm assuming that the retaining wall or the half knee wall, whatever you want to call it, will go up to the sidewalk but not encroach onto the sidewalk?
Correct. So I believe the sidewalk is in the right-of-way, and the proposed encroachment is 1.6 foot from the front property line.
From the front property line, so the front property line then would start at the edge of the sidewalk?
Probably. I mean, we didn't survey it when we were there, so we don't know exactly where that front property line lies in conjunction with the sidewalk. But yeah, we would assume that there's probably a foot on the other side of the sidewalk where the right-of-way is.
Okay,
Yes, Madam Chair, it couldn't be placed in the right-of-way. It's, I believe it's an FDOT right-of-way.
Correct.
And so they wouldn't, they'd have to get permitting for that, which we wouldn't allow either, so.
well, I get, maybe the applicant can answer that question because
Sure.
I have, I would have a problem if it encroached into the sidewalk personally.
Right.
So, okay,
Madam Chair.
okay.
So exactly how close to the highway are people going to be sitting?
Say that one more time, I'm sorry.
So exactly how close to 26 will people be sitting? I mean, are you saying?
I mean, upon a site visit, did you do were you able to do a site
Yes.
visit? I believe it wouldn't be further than the frontward edge of the sidewalk. I don't know that, I believe that's FDOT right away. I don't think they could put it beyond that sidewalk. So it'd be probably adjacent to the inward edge of the sidewalk.
Parallel then to the
And
sidewalk.
the applicant can answer that as well. I
Okay,
mean, obviously,
all
it's, yeah.
Any other questions from staff? Okay, before we hear from the applicant, let's do a site visit roll call then.
No. Yes.
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 Okay, Mr. Twilliger, would you like to come up and address the board? And for your record, please indicate and give us your name and address.
Madam Chair, have you been sworn in?
Yes, he sort of
Okay.
did it at at the last minute.
Clyde Byron Terwilliger, 319 State Road 26, Melrose Farm. This variance we're asking for is a combination of a lot of things. Our average customer age is over 60 years old. People come in with special needs, dogs.
Okay, we need to talk into the mic a little bit better because we're having difficult hearing you.
Okay,
Or
I'm sorry.
up the amperage on the voice.
We are trying to accommodate people with special needs, dogs. Many of our customers have not come back at the restaurant, and they're buying to-go foods. They don't want to sit inside. That's what all this is about. The extension does not increase our seating. It's not intended to. It's back away from the sidewalk. There's no encroachment over the sidewalk.
Okay.
Period. And basically, that's the gist of it. You've got more than enough parking for 3 times our seating capacity. So that's not a problem either. One of the problems that the awning would take care of is the fact that people are backing in and out of those small places on the 26. The traffic is crazy coming from Gainesville on the 26. I think DOT is addressing that, but our thought also was not ever making a parking area again. So that's the other part of the awning. So
Okay, so you answered my questions. It will not encroach on the sidewalk.
not a bit.
Okay. Any other questions?
One question, is this going to be a strong retaining wall, strong enough to keep cars out?
Absolutely, on the outside. We're going to level the entire front of it and even it out for handicapped people. And there'll be a thick barrier on the roadside, so there won't be any chance of getting into it. You're welcome.
What kind of, is it going to be an awning, vinyl awning, or a structure there?
It's a product that's made in Lake Butler, Florida. It's 100% synthetic, and it looks like a roof that the Seminoles would have done. Comes out beautiful, and it's a lifetime warranty. The engineering for the roof is coming from the people that build it. So it's very impressive looking.
Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you, Mr. Twilliger.
Thank you. Thank all of you.
Okay, at this time, anyone in the audience wishing to come forward and speak in favor of this application? No one's coming forward? Okay, I think we have We have a speaker card. Patty Christensen is wishing to come forward and speak in opposition. Okay, for the record, state your name and address.
Patty Ann Christensen, P.O. Box 306, Melrose. I live
Okay, can you give us a 911 address, because that P.O. box gets crowded?
I would prefer not to. I have on the public records.
Oh, okay,
Blocked.
okay,
so-
all right, thank you.
Yes, okay. First, I would like to say thank you to all the people on the board for your service. I'd also like to say thank you to Mr. Terwilliger for his service of the best food in Melrose. I am opposed to this, and it's nothing personal to the applicant, but I think having a canopy, as he stated in his application, is an awning, I think he said. I think the issue is bigger than that. And there's 3 reasons that I oppose this. 1 is I don't believe it's a hardship. 2, I have the issue of creeping improvements. And 3, I think it's bad precedent. The ordinance says that, Ordinance Code Section 45.833 says that each of the following must be met. And as the staff said, it's 5 out of 6 have been met. It also says, which I think is probably the operative element here, that denial of the, these are the considerations that must be met. Denial of the application would deprive the owner of rights enjoyed by other properties and would cause unnecessary or undue hardship. I'm not sure if I really heard anything about hardship. He was talking about having service dogs and people in wheelchairs to be able to have better access. But Mr. Terwilliger owns the 2 lots west of the restaurant, and there would be ample room there to have outdoor seating. I think outdoor seating is a great idea. I don't oppose that at all, but it's the location. I don't think COVID is any longer a threat. I don't know of any place that's closed because of COVID or restricted. And I just have an issue that I don't think he's shown through substantive, competent evidence that there is a hardship. The other 2 lots is almost 200 feet or around 200 feet that he could have to put the extension on. Also, the creeping improvement, the second thing I have a consideration on, is that his application says that he wants to construction of an awning, outside awning. He's explained what the property, what it's made of, but then you put in the retaining wall, and then before you know it, he's going to want to put in, if it's windy or cold, he's going to want to put something down, whether it's plastic or glass. And so basically, before you know it, it's going to be a true extension of the building. It's not going to be just outdoor seating. That's what I would anticipate. Also, the thing about the bad precedent is this basically would put you at a 0 setback line. And I don't know of any property in Melrose that has that. I know that it's not a reason for people to come before you and say, well, he got it, now I want it. That's not necessarily valid. It's case by case. But, Melrose is historic. And I really would like to see it stay historic as far as the streetscape goes. As far as that parking goes, the parking issue, I don't know why they couldn't just put posts down and tell people, prevent people from parking there. I was on this board for 2 years back in the late 1990s, and I've been a member of Historic Melrose forever. I've been on the board there, and I am currently a director emeritus. And so my consideration is the future of Melrose, that, you know, if one person gets this, the next one's going to want it, the next one's going to want it. And it just seems like for the streetscape, it would be better to have at least some kind of uniformity. And hopefully that, you know, if Chapini sells, which it is up for sale, that the new owner, if they take out the gas tanks, that they want to go up to the zero lot line. So at any rate, and it's really, I'm sorry to have to come up and say this because I love Byron, and his restaurant is wonderful. It is our, as I said, our treasure, our town treasure. But I wish that you would consider the bigger picture on this because he has room to put an outdoor place there, and you know, I just think for the historic value of the town that this should be denied. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, any questions for, okay. I guess not. Okay, anyone else wishing to come forward and speak in opposition of this application? Okay, this time no one's coming forward. So if there's nothing else, we will close it to the public and open it up for board motion and discussion. Oh, you got a question, okay.
So we put a condition in there that says this structure can never be enclosed and it must always stay open.
Yeah, Chair, if they were to move forward with enclosing that, to alleviate any concerns with enclosing that or turning that into a permanent structure, they would have to go through our development review committee. And that's pretty much, we send these out, the plans out to all the departments and review them. So we would be aware of it. And at that point, they would have to revisit this entire procedure. So could they just do it on their own? No. Will we permit it? No. They'd have to go through a variance procedure, probably again, to enclose it. This is to allow outdoor seating area not to add to the, even though it does add to their square footage, if they were to enclose it, they would have to go through our development review committee, and we would discuss it then.
Well, I know that during COVID, there was an awning and outdoor seating placed in that area at that time. And then whenever COVID was sort of all the restrictions, the outdoor seating was removed.
And just to bring to your attention, I've pulled up the aerial. This town was built, you know, back in the, I think in the 50s, probably earlier than that. A lot of your older towns have their buildings pulled up to the front so that it does two things. It's traffic calming. People don't drive fast through that. Not only that, but it provides window shopping, so to speak. So the marketability of these restaurants and stores, you know, the effort becomes more, I guess, in plain view. So this is not an uncommon design or site design. This has been going on since the 50s and the 60s to pull everything up to the front. If you've been down West King Street and St. Augustine, you've probably seen all the buildings pulled up to the front. That's how they were designed because it's an older town. So it is a progressive and common practice in planning to pull these buildings up to the front and put seating out front. Now they don't meet all of the criteria. They meet 5 out of the 6. So this is a legislative decision. So ultimately, it is up to the board. Could it be contested in court or appealed? Absolutely. But ultimately, it's up to this board to make that decision.
Okay. Any other questions? Mr. Smith? Oh, okay. Let's just hope there's no smoking. Okay, any other comments, any questions? Okay, I'm still going to call for a motion and discussion. Go ahead. It won't hurt.
Madam Chairman, I move we approve variance 23-000001 as it meets the criteria for variance as requested, required by section 45-833 of the Putnam County Land Development Code, with the condition recommended by staff and authorize the chair to sign the final order.
I second.
We have a motion and second to approve variance 23-001. Any further discussion? If not, all of those in favor, please indicate by raising your right hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, all opposed? Motion carries 8-0. Mr. Terwilliger, there is a 30-day appeal process, so if there's any issues or concerns, please work closely with staff. And good luck. All right. The next thing is the minutes for January 18th, 2023. Has everybody had a chance to read them? Oh, Jenny, they said take draft off of it. Maybe at the top, put draft because it's hard to read them. All right.
I make a motion we approve.
We have a motion and second to approve the minutes for January 18th, 2023. All in favor say aye. All opposed? Motion carries 8-0. Anything else to come before the board today?
Madam Chair, did you discuss if there's any new business or old business?
Oh, no, I didn't. I said anything else to come